Hello and welcome to the next episode of When Tomorrow Comes. So this week I am joined by Philippa and Kieran from our engagement team, and of course Ashley Cook is here to give her time once again. Hi to you all.
Hi Charlotte.
So the Wednesday article this week was excellently written by Philippa, and continuing with our white paper trend, our topic this week was on engagement, but more specifically how the white paper is obviously doing a drive towards more digital engagement. So Philippa, as always, do you want to kick off with giving us a summary of the message that you hope to get across in your article this week?
Sure, thanks Charlotte. So digital engagement was obviously growing in popularity pre-COVID, but obviously given what's happened, it's becoming to the spotlight a lot more, and obviously especially now given the white paper proposals, and obviously it's here to stay. It can definitely increase democracy by hearing obviously many voices and not just the loudest. I think that's clear. It's definitely flexible. It enables people to provide feedback wherever they are. It definitely means that younger people often get more involved who historically have been really hard to reach. But the focus of the article was more than that, and it was about how you actually make local plan consultations relevant to people. There's a danger with digitalising everything. You just make more people aware, and it's about the quality of that engagement and how you make it relevant to people. And I think the other strand in the article was that it's important to note that not all the hard to reach are online, and it's about a combination of approaches. And that's something that we've learnt through a number of case studies we've worked through with local authorities in the past 18 months or so. I don't know if you want to pick up on that, Kieran, at all in terms of the work you've been doing in the past few weeks. Around hard to reach groups and estate renewal.
Well, I think that's exactly right. It's very easy to come to the assumption that everybody's online at the moment, but there's large swathes of the community that aren't, for whatever reason. It might be financial, it might be just simply the connectivity is not there, or it might be down to skills and a gap in skills and a lack of equipment. And I think last couple of months, we've actually begun to do face-to-face engagement again. And it's been a really interesting experience because there's a desperate hunger for people to get out there and to come together. So we've hosted a first kind of resident drop-in, and I would say it was an enormous success. We got a huge number of people that we were really surprised about right at the beginning of the events, hanging around as well as a community and coming together and talking. And some of those people were there for 3.5, 4 hours, actually meeting their neighbours, having the conversations that they've kind of missed out during lockdown. And it was a really great thing to see, and the quality of the feedback as well. I should say that we were also we weren't just doing face-to-face engagement. We'd actually been doing telephone surveys in the lead up to that. So we were using different forms of technology, arguably, and although our team had managed to get the vast majority of the surveys done, we had more people come down and repeat doing the surveys because they wanted to get a slightly different type of feedback across to us. And that opportunity to look somebody in the eye and actually have a real conversation, and for them to be quite a lot more honest, and for us to be able to prompt further questions just because you could see their reaction to what was being said was really important and really vital, and I think really has again demonstrate the importance of actually combining different methods.
And I guess, and from that, if you're saying a combination of traditional and digital is a preferred approach, would you say that the white paper has gone far enough? And also, how would you feel about people's concerns in response to the white paper that local people are going to have less of a voice due to the proposals?
Definitely. So I think it's important that obviously we start that dialogue through this initial consultation period, which the white paper talks about, but that has to continue. And some of the best ideas and the best conversations and how communities come together is through a long period of time. So just having something short and sharp isn't going to be good enough. It needs to be something that continues. And I think where digital engagement is really, really positive, it reaches the masses, it does reach hard to reach groups, but then it frames an ongoing conversation, and particularly with those who may want to be more involved. And it's about making it more than planning and talking to people about planning. It's about making local plan it's relevant to them, particularly to young people, which we picked up in the article, you know, who can be the most affected and can benefit the most from some of those decisions. And historically, that's just not been the case. you get a vocal minority. So I think it's really positive from that point of view, but you've got to continue that dialogue right the way through, not have a short and sharp period of engagement.
Yeah, I think I was just going to pick up on Philippa's point there and what was in her article about making it relevant. I think that, increasing the digitisation of engagement in local plans is good, and, it needs to be balanced against more traditional forms as well. But, having digital forms of engaging people is only worth something if the information that's actually presented is useful and local people can actually understand it, actually get value from what they're being asked to comment on or what they're being asked to contribute to. So I think that there's probably more needed in terms of an exercise in making sure that local authorities use a variety of different options and actually are presenting the materials in the correct way. That's going to get more people engaged, simply, more so than just putting it online. I think we need to make sure that it's not just put online for the sake of it. There's actually, some value added to it as well.
Yeah. And then there's follow-up in terms of those decisions and those actions and how people get involved. That's, the benefit of it, I think, is that you bring those people along then. Another advantage, obviously, you can move quickly with digital engagement. You can, obviously, it's more flexible, so you can get lots of people to comment quite quickly. But then, it's what you do with it then, and how you report back to people and keep them involved. That's where it gets interesting.
Just to return to what Philippa was saying, I think concern we've got with the white paper is that there isn't talk of a much longer conversation. There's a kind of initial hit, and then there isn't this wider debate. And I think I've been fortunate enough to work on some projects for up to a decade now, and the quality of engagement as you go forward is really, really good. You get people opening up and saying different things, and you're able to adapt and change and develop it into something that is really, really important. People's ideas and aspirations do change over time, and it's a fast moving society. So that longer conversation is a really important aspect to actually put into the white paper.
And Ashley, you might want to pick up on this one. I was just wondering if you think the general simplification of the planning system is going to help with this as a process of moving digitally in terms of obviously our local plans. Is that going to make digital engagement easier? And then generally, what data you think that we can collect from this, because that's a huge part of the digital process, is obviously the gathering of data and utilising that, and what data you think that we can pick up on from our engagement process that we're not already doing?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things there. I think from what I've gotten from the white paper is that they're suggesting that more engagement should be done sort of upfront at plan making stages. But there's also a suggestion that, because they're going to try and make that quite thorough, that there'll be less opportunity for engagement at the sort of application on site sort of stage. I think I've got that right anyway, but anyone do correct me if that's wrong. And I think my concern with that is that sites still need to be considered on their own merits, and people may get involved at the local plan stage because they are able to do that and they understand the process. But I think that when there's a site that comes forward that is going to directly impact individual people, I'm worried that that's going to get lost out a little bit when we move to that point. But I think that there's still not sort of enough information to know exactly how that's going to work. And in terms of the data point, me and you, Charlotte, we've spoken for a very long time about how in the moment we've got a process whereby applications are submitted and, there's lots of evidence and reports that contribute to local plans and then to planning applications, and pretty much all the information from that is lost somewhere because we don't capture that information. So I think that if they're going to be setting up a sort of digital platform for local plan making and for engagement, then yeah, the data needs to be captured from the very, very beginning, and there needs to be a system in place that means that that data can be utilised for research purposes, for understanding local areas of concern and topics that local people really engage with, so that they can also improve the system going forward, and then they can improve decision making as well. I don't know who's going to be tasked with making that system, but I think it needs to be something that is really thought about from the outset and implemented from the beginning of their sort of new proposed system.
Yeah, so the benefit is that you can measure the success in terms of those decisions that were taken collaboratively, and then what the impact has been on the place and people and well-being and all of that. That's the long-term benefit of becoming more digitalized and using data a lot more.
And just to go back to the point about relevance, I think this front loading of engagement on the local plan, in my experience, when you're talking to people about these kind of long-term, large-scale plans, you're not just talking about those big ideas, the grand moves, but to actually make it relevant to people, you need to talk about some tangible aspects. So you kind of get the bizarre scenarios of some sites where you're talking about where you're going to create connectivity, where you're going to put large elements of infrastructure on the one hand, and then in the next sentence, you're talking about whether there's drop curbs. And it's this kind of split between scales that actually you need that, because it actually it allows people to understand what they're talking about and have that kind of tangible nature to what it means when you decide something on a much grander scale, but it's still delivering at what your kind of lived experience is.
Great. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to finish up with one last question, probably aimed more at you two, Philippa and Kieran, but especially in the past, obviously, few months, we've been more digitally engaged, but I was just wondering if there are any platforms or pieces of software that you've been using recently which gets you really excited and you hope that get utilised more going forward.
Definitely, I'll pick up on that one. So there's 3 or 4 main players in the market. We're working with all of them at the moment on very different projects. So I think we have good insight into pros and cons, which they all have pros and cons at the moment. And there's lots more coming out. It's really fast paced in terms of the change of the market. We've done 3 recently with Built ID, which has been great in terms of the reach that we've got, but it has all been about that question, as Kieran says, and how you make it relevant to people, what you actually ask them, is really important alongside, the platform that you use. So looking at that plan-based system, and Homes England, I think, have launched this week, obviously site-based digital engagement as well, which is really interesting to see. So yeah, it's really fast-moving, I think, in terms of the software.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's less about the platform, it's more about the content, and it's been very enjoyable working with, more so with filmmakers, people that are taking different types of 360 photography that we've previously spoken about, and drone footage, but especially the filmmakers, animators, understanding or bringing into our industry much more kind of advertising based kind of understanding how you make it hard hitting, but actually drawing people in, because you're working on a different way of engaging people and a different attention span. So there's a lot of learning around that. Then also the way that gives the opportunity that gives you to actually control and to convey a much more complex narrative in a very simple form that generally people are very used to consuming. So that's been quite a fun aspect of the change. So yeah, less about the actual platform, but more about what you're putting into it. The content is a lot more important.
It's quite interesting, as I'm picturing the young 20-somethings, and you've got a couple of seconds to get their attention, and what does that look like? No, that's really interesting, really helpful discussion. Fascinating to see how this all might manifest itself going forward and how it interconnects with the rest of the white paper. But thank you all, that was really useful, and thanks to everyone else who's checked in, and please do join us again next week.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you.